Hi, welcome back to 16 Dorsey Tank Workshop. I'm John. It's pretty cold here in the workshop this morning. It's about -2, so just waiting for it to warm up a bit before I start work. In a recent video, I introduced a new addition to the collection, an Armortek Panzer III L. Here we see the Panzer III arriving in the back of the car. Fits in really nicely. It should be an easy one to transport. And now, moving it off the ramps, it's light enough to push by hand. There's a little bit of resistance because the motors are in. And now finally into the workshop and up on a bench. Let's have a look around. You can see some dirt and corrosion, but it's not too bad. The model was produced by Armortek around 2008-2009 and its hull number 043. I bought the tank assembled. It includes electronics for motion and sound. The first thing I need to do is disassemble the model completely. Then I'll clean everything. I'll use etch primer first and then I'll start reassembly. The model has been built for quite a few years now, so has gathered some dust and grime and also some corrosion on the steel parts. So it'll need a thorough clean. So in this first video on the Panzer III, I'll show you how I bring this dirty, partly corroded old model back to a new state. There will be lots of workshop made additions to the tank, so stay tuned. So here we have the Panzer III. I have it up on a trolley. So the first thing we're going to have to do, you can see it's quite dirty, a lot of corrosion. First thing I need to do is take it apart. Some of these components I will be using, some of them I won't. One or two pieces are slightly damaged, so might need some repair. But overall it's in very good condition. There's very little use on it. I'm going to start by removing the turret roof. Now the roof is off and you can see where there's some corrosion here, or whether that's could be oil or grease, I'm not too sure. There's a little bit of corrosion anyway. I'm going to remove all of the fasteners. Everything will need a good clean. As I go, I'm collecting everything in the magnetic tray. To get the last brackets out, I'm just removing the storage bin from the back. And now start removing the armour plate. And that's one of the armour plates off. When you're pulling one of these apart, you need to be quite careful with the fasteners, especially the ones that are in the aluminium, as you could easily strip the threads. So I undo each fastener just a little bit at a time. This is screwed directly into the aluminium base, so I don't want to strip the threads. So that's the rear of the turret. You can see it's quite dirty, needs clean up. Next I'll remove these two fasteners holding the mantlet onto the base. Again, being careful not to strip threads. The elevation motor mount is being held in place with these two fasteners. So to release, I'll have to take that off as well. Again, being careful with the threads. And that's the gun removed. So you can see quite a bit of dirt. You couldn't just paint this model, it really does need a good clean. I'll just remove these corner plates now. I'm now removing the gear ring from the turret base. It's not corroded at all, I'm surprised, because it's made of steel. Now moving the mount for the elevation control. It's just these 4 bolts, I think they're M6. This is the mount, you can see some corrosion. I think the corrosion is made worse sometimes because it's a mix of steel and aluminium, and the metals combined cause corrosion against each other. Before final assembly, it's important to make sure everything's really clean and coat everything with etch primer. I'll just put these bolts back into the place they came from so that I don't mix them up. Make life a little bit easier. The screws are coming out fairly easily. I'm happy to say nobody's gone mad with Loctite. I see some people use a lot of Loctite, basically Loctite on every screw, which doesn't help if you ever want to take it apart again. I don't use Loctite unless it's specifically required, say for bearings. I haven't had any trouble over the years with tanks falling apart. I've removed the bolts, but they're still held in place. I think there's a couple of large bolts fitted from the front holding the plates together. So I'll need to remove all of this first. Having removed this front armour plate, you can see now that there's 2 bolts holding the assembly together. Having removed those bolts, this part can now lift away. And the gun can be pulled out of the mantlet. These are just loosely fitted. You can see quite a bit of corrosion and dirt in here. It'll need a thorough cleaning. The air vent was just a press fit. I just knocked it out with a hammer. This appears to be glued in place as well. This is the third cupola. Some glue on it, but I'll apply some heat before knocking that out. This little hatch here was used for signalling. But I'll be making my own one eventually, so I won't be too worried about that. Applying some heat released the cupola cleanly. Not too sure what sort of glue it was, but it came away fairly easily. But the third roof, there's quite a bit of corrosion, needs a good clean. Next, to remove the hatch. I don't think these screws were part of the kit, but they look fairly okay, so I might retain them if I can. These armoured covers, I make my own version, functional ones. These ones are pretty awful, so I'll get rid of them. They just seem to be glued in. They're just white metal covers. Yeah, there was some sort of glue holding them in place. I've removed the hatch from the cupola. I've also removed the armoured covers, because I'll be using my own armoured covers. I'll probably make my own hatch as well. Maybe the split hatch. So here's everything stripped apart, waiting to be cleaned, etched, primed and reassembled. Next will be to remove the tools and fittings from the hull and the various hatches. Most of them I won't use. If you watch my channel, you know I have a tendency to make my own parts, so a lot of these I won't be using. Lights, jack block, box, I'll use the jack. I'll probably use the fire extinguisher somewhere. Any tools like shovels or hammers, I may use the tool part but fit wooden handles. So next thing will be to find a box and throw all the small parts into it, and I can worry about what I'm going to use later. The easiest way to remove the tools will be just to remove these mudguards. Remove the mudguards from the supports. I think that should release them. But we'll see how we get on with this. To make access a little easier, I'm removing the track. So I've taken out the small pin and I'm just going to knock the track pin through. And I can pull it out on the other side. removing the track makes it easier to get my hands under the mudguard. And it's all falling apart now. There's a couple of additional fasteners inside here holding the mudguard in place, so I'll just remove them next. Now the mudguards are free to come away. I'm very happy to see that these brass etch tread pads are not glued in place. Usually people glue these on, but it would have made cleaning a lot more difficult, so that's really good. Now I've removed the mudguards. You can see how dirty this etch is. Some sort of oil underneath, which is good in some ways. It stopped the mudguards from rusting too much. But everything came apart well. Happily, no Loctite.
It's kind of stupid buying a tank like new, because there's so many of them. That's second hand.
Now here's Alex helping with mudguards now. It's all coming apart really nicely. Next, I'll start removing the top deck, the hatches. I picked this up in Lidl this morning. Small electric screwdriver, fairly low torque, but it was in the bargain bin for €10. So we'll give it a try. And that's that out as well. So this is the turret rotation motor. We'll remove that now and take the rest of this apart. I've been cleaning corrosion as I'm going along. It's coming off really well. I'll just disassemble the rest of the front plate here and get it ready for a clean-up. That's the rear section now loose. Next I'll remove all the hatches. Here's one of the vent covers removed. Having removed the covers, you can see the amount of corrosion. I'll now remove all these steel brackets around the edge. So that's the brackets removed. The whole roof is off. A lot of dirt and grease, so lots of cleaning. I'd say this is corrosion. This is a steel top, so a lot of cleaning to do. I'm making two piles. One pile is the steel parts and one pile is the aluminium parts. The aluminium will clean up well with either alcohol or acetone, and then just a light sanding with a scotch pad. A bit more work involved in cleaning the steel parts. So next I'm going to remove all of these upper sections. It's all aluminium. The upper armour here is held to the lower armour with this piece of triangle bracket. It's quite similar to the way the original Panzer III was put together. In order to lift out the transmission and work on the interior, they could lift the whole top section off, just undo the bolts along here and lift the whole section off. The front plate's now off, so I'm just removing the MG ball mount. And the front visor, armoured cover. So at this level, I'll stop disassembly for a while and start cleaning up the parts I've already removed. Get them bagged up and sorted. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoy watching the new tank going together. It'll be a change from Tiger 1's. In the next video, I'll get all the wheels and suspension removed and start to disassemble the whole lower hull. And then we'll start the thorough cleanup of all the parts before I reassemble. Once everything's cleaned up, I will be etch priming all the parts. So stay tuned to the channel, there'll be more soon.